The Massachusetts Department of Transportation may choose to retain and distribute the video, still images, audio, and/or chat transcript. By continuing attendance with this virtual public meeting, you are consenting to participate in a recorded event. If you are not comfortable being recorded, please turn off your camera, keep your microphone muted, and refrain from chatting in the transcript box. Else you may choose to excuse yourself from the meeting. If you prefer to excuse yourself, you can find the materials at mass.gov/CIP. Please note that you are automatically muted upon entering this meeting. The meeting will be open to comments at the end of the formal presentation. Next slide, please. Just a few Zoom controls here. The microphone button controls the microphone and the speakers. The camera button turns the camera on and off. The chat box is for asking a question, sharing comments via private chat to the host. Note that all chat comments are part of the official record. You can hit the hand button to raise your hand or request to be unmuted for verbal comments. As a side note, it may not be, depending on your Zoom version, under the participants section. It may also be under reactions. The globe button is to select interpretation language. You can click closed captions to view captions automatically generated by Zoom. To adjust caption size, click the upward arrow next to the start video, stop video, then click video settings and accessibility. You can move the slider to adjust the caption size. If you cannot access the internet or have technical problems, please call into the meeting at 1-888-788-0099, meeting ID 826-0250-2217. Passcode is 987-991. Next slide, please. When sharing questions and comments, please state your name first. Share only one comment at a time, limited to 2 minutes to allow others to participate. There are 3 ways to indicate you would like to share a comment. Use the raise hand button to request to be unmuted for verbal comments. Use the chat box button to submit written comments or questions to the host using the chat panel. And hit *9 if you're on the phone to ask a question. And when your turn, the moderator will call out the last 4 digits of your phone number and unmute your audio. So before we I introduce Michelle Ho, who will take us through the rest of the meeting, I would like to ask Stephen Tupper from the Cape Cod Municipal Planning Organization to say a few words.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so thank you, everyone. This is Stephen Tupper. I'm the Transportation Program Manager at the Cape Cod Commission. Here this evening, speaking on behalf of the Cape Cod Commission, also the Cape Cod Metropolitan Planning Organization. MassDOT team will talk a little bit more about the role of the MPO, but in general, they're an important part of developing the outreach needed to bring some of these plans forward and to understand what the regional priorities are for investment decisions of both federal and state dollars. So the Cape Cod MPO is in charge with funding from the Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration for Cape Cod. We do not cover the islands, but we also work very closely with our partners on the islands. So appreciate the opportunity to speak today and also share some things that we've heard throughout the public outreach process run by the MPO. So I want to share just a couple of highlights of things we've heard over the last couple of months as we've been doing outreach to hear what some of the regional priorities are. We did receive 214 comments during our outreach period, so heard a lot of different ideas from members of the public of where they thought important investment priorities were. Many of those were issues that are certainly common across the Commonwealth. We all have challenges with aging infrastructure, much of which was not built with all road users in mind. So certainly a challenge to safely accommodate bicycles, pedestrians, and transit users on some of our roadways. We're also certainly all dealing with the challenges associated with climate change both from a mitigation and adaptation perspective. So it's something that was brought up during discussions as we were talking about where to invest our transportation dollars. There are also some unique challenges that were discussed from the Cape Cod region and the islands as well, having to do with the seasonality of our regions and the demand that puts on our infrastructure. Certainly, we've got different challenges throughout the year. Also, some unique challenges related to the infrastructure itself. Certainly, the Cape Cod Canal bridges were something that was brought up frequently as an important connection to the rest of the Commonwealth. That combined with the ferries is certainly the lifeline as well over to the islands. So something that was on a lot of people's mind as we thought about what priorities we might have. And then finally, certainly there is a focus on some of our major roadways that need improvement, including Route 6, and then roadways that need some overhauls in terms of multimodal accommodations, including Route 28 and Route 151, and how that will be one of those projects will be addressing portion of 151 will be discussed later. There's also comments related to transit. Certainly a lot of support for the transit service provided by the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority, including those that also really like the Cape Flyer service, seasonal train service down onto Cape Cod, and some suggestions about the importance of exploring the commuter rail option to have commuter rail connection from Cape Cod up to the Boston metropolitan area. And then finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight some of the bicycle pedestrian projects that people wanted to see investments in particularly the most supported project we heard about was a Bourne Rail Trail, an effort to connect the Shining Sea Bikeway up to the Cape Cod Canal Path, an important connection in our regional path network. We got 182 comments specifically looking for support for that project. While that may not be something that we're going to talk about specifically in the one-year plan that will be discussed later, it is important to continue to share the regional priorities through the MPO process and anytime there's an opportunity with our state partners as well. So I know there's some on the call who are here to talk about some of these projects. So I want to thank everyone who joined and look forward to listening as well as we hear some of the public comment later on in the agenda tonight.
Thank you, Stephen. So next I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Ho from MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning, who will take us through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Stephen. I hope everyone can hear me all right. Welcome to tonight's discussion of our 2022 capital investment plan. We appreciate you joining us this evening for our discussion. We're going to give you an overview of what's in the 2022 capital investment plan, what our approach was for this year's plan, and the focus of our investments. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some new initiatives that MassDOT and the MBTA will be launching that will be included in this plan. And as Steve mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the CIP and the STIP align and the funding that's associated with both of those plans. And finally, we'll talk about how we can use and explore the CIP with the updated interactive format. This is the last public meeting that we've held throughout the Commonwealth. So thank you very much. And we will look for your feedback on the plan during the comment period. So this slide is really just a refresher of what is the capital investment plan for MassDOT and the MBTA. So it's our annually produced budget and policy document. It programs all of our state and federal funds that we receive for transportation in the Commonwealth. And those investments are for the improvements to our overall transportation system. So the investments are included for all of MassDOT and the MBTA capital assets. It includes investments in our roadways, our bridges, our bicycle and pedestrian facilities, our transit investments, our transit vehicles, and our stations and our track and right of way. It includes investments in our aeronautics division that manages and works with the public use airports across the Commonwealth. And these are the airports that are not managed by Massport. It also includes investments for our rail group that includes the rail freight network throughout the Commonwealth. That is not under the jurisdiction of the MBTA, and it also includes investments in the Registry of Motor Vehicle. Back when we initiated the 2017-2021 capital investment plan, we started with a strategic framework that's outlined in the right-hand portion of this slide, where we had three main priorities: reliability, which is in green, modernization, which is in blue, and expansion in the gray. By what we mean by reliability and modernization is the reliability are investments that improve the overall condition of the existing transportation system and our assets. And modernization is those investments that we are making to make our system safer, more accessible, to accommodate growth, to address climate change and resiliency. And then expansion are investments that expand the diverse transportation options, such as investments in bicycle and pedestrian facilities, Shining Sea Path, or investments that expand the capacity of the system through, say, the investments that we're making in bringing service through the South Coast Rail program, commuter rail service down to New Bedford and Fall River. Some of the programs that are under each of these priorities, for just to name a few, for under reliability, the Highway Bridge Program is one of our key investments. Under the modernization, it could be the Complete Streets program that we have, or for the MBTA, the Red and Orange Line investments in their transformation program. And under expansion, as I mentioned, the bicycle and pedestrian investments that we make in providing new bicycle and pedestrian facilities and shared use paths falls under the expansion category, as does South Coast Rail and the investments that we're making in the Green Line Extension project. So for this capital plan, there still was a lot of uncertainty as we emerge from this pandemic. Restrictions are just being relaxed now. We are not quite certain of with the future of work, as we like to call it, what the what the demands will be on our transportation network overall. We are waiting to see how riders will come back to the system, what our transit revenues will look like, what our toll revenues will look like on our toll facilities. There is uncertainty at the federal level with our federal transportation legislation, the federal surface transportation authorization that we have that is used to program our federal funds that are programmed in the STIP that I'm going to talk about in another couple slides. That legislation was extended for 1 year and expires this coming September 30th, 2021. The structure of that new reauthorization language is yet unknown. And obviously there's a lot of talk in Washington about the American Jobs Bill and the new infrastructure funding that may become available to the Commonwealth. Given all of that, we thought it was best to continue with a 1-year capital investment plan that we're calling a maintenance of effort plan for 2022. We will embark on a revamped 5-year planning effort once the financial landscape becomes a little clearer to us. But we're continuing our support for ongoing investments that were already underway or scheduled to start in 2022. We're continuing our support for our major ongoing capital programs like the Green Line Extension and South Coast Rail. But we are including some targeted new investments that advance our goals and priorities, as I'll talk about in another slide. So the emphasis has really been on building a strong foundation for future funding opportunities as those new funding opportunities become available to the Commonwealth. So both the MassDOT and the CIP development and capital delivery teams are really focused on execution optimization of the capital program as we know it today. So we had 3 main goals for this capital plan. One was really to deliver a more strategic performance-based capital plan that was informed and driven by the extensive planning efforts that we've embarked on in the Commonwealth and the studies over the past several years. We've done a statewide bicycle and pedestrian plans. We've done a statewide rail plan, a statewide freight plan. The MBTA did a Focus 40 strategic visioning exercise. They did a rail visioning exercise. There have been a number of other studies that have been done and a number of studies that are underway. We want those studies and that planning effort and those goals and objectives to inform what we're doing and result in a more outcome-based approach to our capital plan. What do the investments that we make get us in the long term? What are the benefits to the Commonwealth? One of the other key goals has been to build a capital program that really reflects this multimodal strategy that we have been working on with all of our investments in the capital plan. So when we do, say, a roadway project, when we do a paving job, we're not only just paving the road, we're also including other transportation modes. We're addressing bicycle and pedestrian by either like striping or adding a bike lane or fixing the sidewalk. So it's not just a roadway project. It's not just a silo. It's a more multimodal approach to the types of projects that we're undertaking. And then finally, the other goal we have, and one of the reasons why we're here tonight, is to better communicate what investments are included in the capital plan and share how those investments benefit all parts of the Commonwealth at all modes and the very many different constituents groups we have across the Commonwealth. I wanted to talk a little bit about the MBTA, and though the MBTA is not a huge presence down on the Cape and certainly not on the islands, they are an important partner in our capital plan development. They too are focused on a maintenance of effort plan, and they're continuing to focus on projects that are already underway with also including targeted investments to set themselves up for the future funding opportunities. So they continue to prioritize and invest in their steady state asset replacement and modernization. They're upgrading their revenue fleet to with the procurement of new hybrid electric buses for the Silver Line. They're overhauling their commuter rail locomotives, and they're funding on an ongoing replacement program to replace the vans and sedans used by the ride. These are just some of the types of investments that they're doing that reflect asset replacement and modernization. They're continuing to, and they have a significant program that invests in the MBTA bridges and tunnel upgrades. They're replacing the Gloucester Drawbridge, which has been problematic. And they're continuing with their installation of automatic train control on the north side of the commuter rail system. They're also completing the Braintree and Quincy Avenue garage rehabilitation projects. But they're continuing also to invest and support a number of large in-flight capital programs. The Green Line extension is one of their key capital programs that they're continuing to invest in, and it's that the Green Line extension is scheduled to commence revenue service by the end of calendar year 2021. So that's at the end of December of this year. And they're continuing with construction of South Coast Rail Phase 1, which will bring additional commuter rail service to the South Coast, to Fall River and New Bedford, opening up that the opportunities for the residents of that region to access jobs, to go to, say, attend college at Bridgewater State College, and provide other economic opportunities. They're continuing to make investments that transform the red and orange lines with investments in new vehicles, in their maintenance facilities, in their yards, and the track and signals work, continuing to also implement fare transformation to bring a different type of technology that you can use to pay for your services on the MBTA. And then they're also making targeted investments in what they call the next round of transformation programs to establish a strong foundation for future funding opportunities. And one of the key things that they're continuing to work on is the final design and construction of the Quincy bus facility to support the future battery electric bus fleets. And this is, again, electrification, as we've heard in the public, is a key thing for the MBTA. The public would like to see more electrification of the buses, the commuter rail network, and this is one of the first steps that they're doing to ensure that they can accommodate those new battery electric buses. They're doing additional investments in the bus priority infrastructure and passenger amenities, and they're continuing some of the investments that they've been planning to support overall rail transformation. And there's a number of other projects that they're working on. They're completing the Leechmere Viaduct rehabilitation project. And then they have been working to transform on investments that transform the Green Line. So it's investments in their track, signals, stations. In the news of late was the station consolidation on the B line of the Green Line. So that is continuing forward. As many folks know, the governor signed a new $16.2 billion transportation bond bill this past January. And the bond bill authorized a number of new programs and funding that really were intended to address asset conditions and congestions at the local level. There's the programs that also enhance pedestrian transit access, improve, and it also provided new funding that will be used to improve the condition of the MassDOT highway bridges. But I wanted to highlight 3 new programs that we're including in the 2022 capital plan. And these new programs are municipal programs that we have a strong commitment to the partnership we have with the municipalities throughout the Commonwealth. We still have our Chapter 90 program that we will continue to fund. And we have our Complete Streets program, which is really for those communities that have an approved complete streets policies and are interested in ensuring that their streets that they design and build can address our multimodal approach to building the roadway, where they address the bicycle and pedestrian facilities as part of the roadway project. And we also have our small municipal bridge program for those bridges in municipalities that are less than 20 feet in length that do not qualify for federal aid funding. So we're launching a municipal pavement program really in response to what we've heard from the public, that the Chapter 90 funds that many of the cities and towns receive are not sufficient to really help them address the pavement condition on municipally owned state routes throughout the Commonwealth. This will be a new program that will be either structured either as a municipal grant program or a partnership program with the MassDOT Highway Project Delivery. We're programming to spend $15 million in 2022 to launch this program. It was authorized in the bond bill at $100 million. So that's a brand new program, again, focused on pavement condition at the municipal level. And then we're continuing a very popular program that we launched in 2020, what we called the Shared Streets and Spaces program. That was really launched in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this program provides grants to municipalities to help them meet their individual needs for more and safer outdoor recreation, commerce, space, community activities, mobility. Think about parklets that might be in your community that might have been created with funding from a Shared Streets and Spaces grant. So it's really to encourage more bike and pedestrian friendly use of the outdoor space. We are funding this one at $4 million in 2022. It was authorized at $20 million. So when we launched it in 2020, we didn't actually have its own authorization, but the bond bill did include this program because it has been so successful and popular. And then finally, we're launching a local bottleneck reduction program. We're funding it at $2.5 million in 2022. And this program was designed and proposed in the bond bill. Primarily came out of the recommendations that were in the report to the governor on congestion in the Commonwealth, the 2019 report. And the funding will be mostly in the form of grants to cities and towns that would address localized and operationally influenced bottlenecks that impact traffic flow. And it would be through sort of moderate cost-effective congestion relief tools like a redesign effort or a restriping or lane or shoulder width adjustments. These are not huge investments, but again, they're at the local level. So it's another one of our programs for municipalities. And then finally, new funding that was in the bond bill was $1.25 billion in new grant anticipation notes authorization. And this type of funding was used to support the Accelerated Bridge Program. That was a very successful program that addressed a number of the major, what we call the mega bridges throughout the Commonwealth. The Whittier Bridge between Amesbury and Salisbury, we totally replaced that bridge, has 2 new spans. That was funded using the Accelerated Bridge Program and GANS funding. So this new program, again, it's for federally eligible projects. And we will use the funding to improve the condition of the overall number of national highway system bridges across the Commonwealth. The Highway Division is currently working on developing a list of the eligible projects that would be funded with GANS, and all of the identified projects will be added into or amended into the state transportation program as required because they are funded with federal highway funds. Currently, we have about $490 million programmed in 2022 to spend to improve the conditions of our bridge network, and that includes $15 million in new GANS fundings. Since the program will launch in 2022 after we have approval of our 2022-2026 STIP, and as I'll discuss in a minute, the federal fiscal year is different from the state fiscal year. So the State Transportation Improvement Program is our federally required plan. We have been working in concert with, at the same time as developing the CIP, with developing the 2022 to 2026 STIP. It's a 5-year plan, and it programs all of the Federal Highway Administration and federal investments, as well as the Federal Transit Awards, Federal Transit Administration Awards, and we'll be programming those funds over the next 5 years. So it's dedicated strictly to federally funded roadway and bridge projects and transit projects for the MBTA and the regional transit authorities. It's subject to federal approval, And it governs and covers the federal fiscal year, which runs from October 1st of every year through September 30th. So it's it starts 1 quarter later than the state fiscal year for the Commonwealth. It includes all of the federal aid projects that are programmed by our 10 metropolitan planning organization partners. So Cape Cod Commission and the Cape Cod Metropolitan Planning organization. It includes their project. It includes the projects for the islands, Nantucket and Martha's Vineyards, that are funded with the federal formula funds. And it also includes our 3 rural transportation planning organizations in Massachusetts. One of the differences between the STIP and the CIP is that the STIP is what we call an obligation-based document. So we program the money. The STIP reflects how that money is spent out over time. Most of the projects spent out over more than 1 year. So the CIP includes the spending of those funds that are programmed over the time frame. And all of the STIP projects are also included in the CIP. The STIP does comprise a large subset of the CIP. And as this nested circle diagram illustrates, in the bottom circle, the smallest circle, is the STIP and the individual TIPs for all the highway and transit federal aid projects. And then we do get other federal money in the form of Federal Aviation Administration grants and Federal Railroad Administration grants. So combined with the federal highway and the federal transit funding, that middle circle captures all the federal funds that the Commonwealth receives. And then finally, the large darker circle captures the rest of the funding that we receive, the state bonds that are used, the toll funds, the MBTA's own revenue bonds, etc., in addition to the federal funds that fund our transportation program on an annual basis. So the MPOs and the TPOs are really key partners with us in developing the plans for our transportation investments in the Commonwealth. They're the transportation policy and decision-making bodies that are composed mostly of local and state officials. They really are the ones that develop their individual TIPs, and so they play the key critical role in developing the overall STIP. So each MPO and each TPO annually reviews and selects their eligible projects for funding with their allocation of the federal funds that they receive. And those projects are included in that region's 5-year TIP. So Cape Cod has endorsed their TIP for this year. So they have a 5-year transportation improvement program. Collectively, all the TIPs from the 13 MPOs and TPOs in Massachusetts comprise the STIP and the federally funded portion of the CIP. So the map on the bottom left reflects all of the MPOs and TPOs in the Commonwealth. The black regions are the TPOs. So Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket are considered a rural transportation planning organization, as is Franklin out in the near the Berkshires. So one of the things we did this year is post on the mass.gov CIP website information about the MPO process and the importance of the STIP and the CIP. The websites and information on the MPOs, individual MPOs and TPOs, the links are provided in that write-up. So if you go to mass.gov/CIP under engaging local and regional officials, it'll take you to information on the critical relationship that we have with our MPO and TPO partners and how the CIP and the STIP align and interact. For this capital plan for 2022, we have about $4 billion programmed in investments to spend over that next coming fiscal year. The donut chart on the left, the circle chart, shows the 45%, that's it reflected in green, is focused on reliability investments, and 27%, which is in the blue, is focused on modernization investments. So since the launch of the 2017 capital investment plan, we have focused our investments on the first 2 priorities of reliability and modernization. And over that time, roughly 3/4 of our investments have been for reliability and modernization, with targeted investments in expansion. So 17% of our investments are in the expansion category, which covers our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure investments, as well as our investments in major capital programs like Green Line Extension or South Coast Rail. Arrayed at the top of the slide is just the spending by reliability by division. And as you can see for highway and the MBTA, since they do have the largest share of the federal funds, those projects, the federal highway and the federal transit administration grants, they have the largest amount of spending, and that is consistent from year to year. So overall, the capital plan this year is about $370 million more in anticipated spending than we had in last year's capital investment plan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the MassDOT projects that are in the CIP for the Cape and the Islands region. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just some that I pulled out to give everyone tonight sort of a flavor of some of the projects that we have included in the CIP. And the full list is in Appendix A to the CIP story map. So please check out that appendix. So for the aeronautics division, we're making some investments at the Chatham Municipal Airport, runway 24 easements we're acquiring. They're rehabilitating a taxiway Echo at Nantucket Memorial Airport, and they're doing some obstruction removals at Martha's Vineyard Airport. This is, again, just a snapshot of the types of projects that we have. And then for highway, I know there has been a lot of discussion at the MPO level about the project in Barnstable, the intersection improvements at Iona Road, Route 28 and Yarmouth Road. That is programmed for funding in this CIP, and you're showing the project, the spending is a roughly $5.3 million in fiscal year 2022. They're constructing a shared use path in Oak Bluffs along the Beach Road. In Mashpee, there's corridor improvements on Route 151 from Old Barnstable Road to the Mashpee Rotary. In Tisbury, there's some bicycle and pedestrian improvements along Beach Road also. And then Yarmouth, there's some resurfacing road on Route 6. And there's some improvements in Bourne, multimodal improvements at the Belmont Circle. And then I have listed here for the regional transit authorities, investments at Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket Regional Transit Authority. And Martha's Vineyard has been very active in the procurement of electric bus for their fleet on the Vineyard. So most of the investments that the regional transit authorities make in their capital plan are the replacement of buses and support vehicles, and then preventive maintenance on their facilities and facility maintenance. I will note that for the regional transit authorities, what we show here is just the state match to their federal funds. So each of the regional transit authorities has their own Federal Transit Administration grants. Those go directly to the RTAs, and they are not included in the MassDOT capital plan, since they control them directly and they don't pass through directly through MassDOT. And then just to give you a flavor of some of the investments that the top 10 projects that are in the MBTA's list for 2022. Again, as I mentioned, they're continuing their investments to complete the Green Line Extension project, which will enter revenue service at the end of this calendar year, 21. They're continuing with the construction of the South Coast Rail program down to Fall River, New Bedford. And as I mentioned earlier, ATC implementation on the north side of the commuter rail lines. And then they have a big signal program on the red and orange line, and they're procuring commuter rail buses that will support revenue service on the South Coast Rail commuter. And then they're continuing with procurement of red and orange line vehicles. And I should have noted that each of the circles represents the mode, and the color does indicate what it's for. So the GL in the top circle, top green circle is Green Line Extension, and then the commuter rail is always represented by a purple circle with the CR in it. And then obviously the red circle and the orange circle, red and orange line, and so on. So they have a number of initiatives that are ongoing. This list is $1.2 billion in program spend. Of the $4 billion we have in spending for 2022, roughly 50% or $2 billion is for the MBTA investments, and roughly $2 billion is for the MassDOT investments that include highway, aeronautics, R&V, and the MassDOT Rail and Transit Group. So we publish the CIP both as a virtual story map, but we also do provide a PDF version of the story map on our website. So the story map is provides an opportunity for users to really interact with the CIP content itself and to be able to comment on specific projects. And we think we've done a lot of work to make it more intuitive and user friendly. So we would appreciate folks' thoughts, if they had any, on how well it works. And in lieu of in-person public meetings this year, since we were allowed, we had 6 virtual regional public meetings. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the last one tonight. And then we do want to sort of reiterate for the public that is here tonight how projects can advance in the CIP, because I think this is important, and this is the role that the public can play to make sure we hear what the priorities are. As Steve Tupper mentioned, we do want to hear from folks. We do want to understand what the priorities are, because that helps to inform what we do and what we need to prioritize in the future. So both the MassDOT and the MBTA are involved in a lot of local planning and prioritization processes. We have a number of planning studies that are underway. There's always an opportunity for the public to get involved. And the MPOs and TPOs also have their planning and prioritization process. So as the MPO, like the Cape Cod Metropolitan Planning Organization, is developing its TIP, and they're evaluating the projects that they have in front of them for to be included in their TIP for funding. The public can work with their municipal leaders to get their priorities heard and put forth the project ideas for consideration. And so I think it's just important that everyone understands that there's an opportunity to participate in a number of different venues to advance a project in the CIP. So this was just our public meeting schedule. As you can see, it's June 3rd. It's the last one. But I wanted to highlight how folks can comment on the CIP. So there is embedded within the online story map are what we call our CIP online comment tool. You click on the tool, and also I'll show you in a minute. It allows you to comment on specific projects or submit a general comment. We also accept any emails, and the email address is masscip@state.ma.us. And we also accept physical letters from any stakeholder who wishes to send in a letter with their comments on the capital plan. So this is just a snapshot, a screenshot of what the comment tool looks like when you get to that portion of the story map. You can, on the left, you can filter projects by division, by the project name, by an MPO region, by a CIP program. If you wanted to see all the highway bridge projects, for example, you can search by cost. You can enter your address and you can view the nearby projects. And on the right, it'll give it the information will pop up in here. And on the right, you can leave the comment, and you can leave a non-specific general comment if you want, or you can leave a comment on a specific project. So the CIP Comment Tool went live on May 25th. The comment period ends June 14th. So please, if you would like to submit a comment and you don't want to submit it here tonight, please go online and click on the comment tool and submit a comment, or send us an email prior to June 14th. And so we do want to talk about how we use public comments and why it's important to hear what you have to say. It's really critical to help us understand what are the transportation needs in the Commonwealth. We'd like to hear your comments on a specific project. So if there's a specific project that's ongoing now, we'll share that information with the project managers that are working on that project, and that information can be taken into consideration as the project is developed or implemented. Comments that are support of future projects not currently programmed. We do want to understand what the level of interest is in the particular project. It helps to inform when that project should advance, how much interest there is in getting that project advanced, and whether resources are devoted to that project or not. And then we do look for comments in support of specific CIP programs. That helps us to sort of drive what should we be doing, how much should we be investing? So for example, if people are really interested in the bicycle and pedestrian program, it helps to inform how much money we should be setting aside in our 5-year plan to invest in our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure throughout the Commonwealth, or a highway bridge network, or whatever the program might be. But it's just important that we try to understand what the level of interest is in the programs, what the level of interest is in the projects. And any general comment that folks want to help share with us about the CIP process overall, that helps the way we set our investment priorities, and the things that we should consider as we're setting our investment priorities, are welcome also. So I want to thank you for listening to me tonight. As I said, the comment period does end on June 14th. To find the capital investment plan, go to mass.gov/massdot/CIP, and there'll be a link to click on to the 2022 capital investment plan. And as I said, embedded within that plan is the online comment tool that you can go to, or there might be a link directly on the website. And then there's to send an email, it's masscip@state.ma.us. And to send a letter, you would send it to MassDOT, Legislative and Public Affairs, 10 Park Plaza, room 4160, Boston, Mass. 02116. We have been posting the recordings on our CIP website, so you're welcome to listen to any of the other presentations that we gave at the other 5 meetings that we held. Each of those meetings had a list of investments for that particular meeting. So by and large, the presentation is the same except for that page. And with that, I'll turn it back to Patrick for public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Before we get started with public comment, just going to ask if there are any elected officials in the audience tonight that would like to submit a comment. Please raise your hand now. All right, seeing none, I will now open up the meeting to public comment. We will take any comments you have. You can use the raise hand function as a reminder, or you can submit it in the chat box here. All right, we're going to go to David McPherson.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you for recognizing me. Yes, my name is David McPherson, and I am the, turn on my video. The chairman of a local committee at the town of Bourne that is charged with the Bourne Rail Trail project that was referenced earlier by Steve Tupper of the Cape Cod Commission. And basically, I'm just here to emphasize the strong community support for this project. And Steve referenced that, you know, there were 182 comments received as part of the TIP process at the Cape Cod MPO. And I would just note that those represented 85% of the public comments received as part of that process. And, you know, the project is making progress, but it's very slow, and I think a little bit frustrating, particularly as we recognize there's a lot of competition for funding for a lot of very worthwhile projects on Cape Cod. So I very much appreciated the comments about the desire to kind of build a strong foundation for future funding opportunities that may come as a result through infrastructure bills and so forth. And so what I would like to do is just to kind of put our project out there as a important candidate for funding that becomes available, and just, you know, offer my assistance to provide any input. One thing that I noted, there was a reference to an accelerated bridge program that, you know, helped you know, improve a lot of the important bridges across the state. And what popped to my mind is I'm wondering if there's something like that that could be created for shared use paths across the state. I know on the Cape, throughout the region, there's strong support for expanded bicycle and pedestrian pathways. There is a concept called, I think it's called Vision 88, to create a shared use pathway that would run from Woods Hole all the way to Provincetown. And I think if we could have some type of accelerated program for bicycle and pedestrian paths, that would be wonderful. So I think I'll stop about there. But again, just want to emphasize the strong, not only just local community support, but regionally for the Bourne Rail Trail and shared use paths in general across the Cape. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comment. Would anyone else like to submit a public comment? You can use the raise hand feature. Well, seeing none, I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight with us for this presentation. If you, again, just as a reminder, we are accepting comments on the CIP until June 14th. And to comment, you can go to mass.gov/CIP. You can use the online comment tool there. You can email us at masscip@state.ma.us, or you can send us a physical letter to MassDOT Legislative and Public Affairs, 10 Park Plaza, room 4160, Boston, MA 02116. Thank you so much again for joining us, and I'm going to close out this meeting.
Thank you all for joining us tonight.